Hi folks, and welcome to BreakingWoke, how to identify, debunk and dismantle politically correct ideas. America sneezes and the world catches a cold. Or was that China and a virus? The US is culturally preeminent, and what happens there affects everyone globally. It's something of a tone setter. Who can say who will win the US elections playing out right now? Let's put the personalities aside and ask a different question. What happens if either ideology wins out? Taken to its logical ends, what does each set of ideas do? First, conservatism. Put aside the cartoonish caricature of the idea presented by CNN. They don't know what they're talking about. Liberal media would have you believe that conservatives are roughly equivalent to Nazis. Here's the problem with that. The man who led the Allied forces against Hitler was conservative Christian Winston Churchill. Come to that, the man who established the first great Western democracy was conservative Christian George Washington. Then, 100 years later, the man who abolished slavery in America was conservative Christian Abraham Lincoln. Finally, the man who stared down the communist Soviet Union was conservative Christian Ronald Reagan. Here's a politically incorrect thing to say, though it's true. If your goal is to establish a democracy, if your goal is to abolish slavery, if your goal is to oppose Nazism, or if your goal is to stare down a communist tyranny, what you really need are conservative Christians at the helm. So, what is the conservative view? Properly conceived, it consists of these four things. Rights do not come from the government. Rights are understood to pre-exist. This was best expressed in the US Constitution, which said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal before God, and that they hold certain unalienable rights." The concept is that rights pre-exist any state. They are not granted. Around this idea, you may then form your state, which is permitted to uphold law and to provide infrastructure. Number 2, new social and societal ideas develop slowly and peacefully, in contradistinction to violent revolution. English common law is a great example of this one. The rights and legal recourse of individuals are not granted by a state. Instead, they are negotiated slowly from the ground up. In this sense, the conservative project follows the exact same approach as the scientific formula. Ideas are slowly vetted through a process of experience and experimentation. That which works, that which is held to be true, survives. This is the logical antithesis to the idea of values being imposed via violent revolutions. Number 3, there should be no grand social vision in which everyone participates. And the simple reason for this is people are not pawns, they are free. A grand social vision in which people are caused to participate impedes on freedom. It is not for the government to engage in social engineering because people are free. And number 4, the type of equality favored is equality of rights and equality before the law. That, broadly speaking, is the conservative project. In contradistinction, the leftist worldview believes something different. 1. Rights are granted. They come to us from a state, a king, or a tyranny. This is why the left and conservatives are most split on issues such as abortion. Conservatives believe that every life is sacred and that that status is not up to the state to determine. The left argues that a child is a meaningless collection of cells right up until the point at which the state grants it personhood. The conservative viewpoint holds that such a view is arrogant and plays God with the rights of humans. Number 2, the greater good outweighs the rights of the individual. If there is any rallying cry of collectivism and of the left, it is this one idea, that greater societal good should outweigh the rights of the individual. Those who know their history know that this is the formula for tyranny. It sounds kind, doesn't it? It is precisely the ideology that informed the construction of the Soviet Union. Number 3, populaces should be engaged in grand social vision. This comes from the wartime politics of the progressives in the US. Politicians in power found it addictive to be able to move populaces, engage groups, and get people to do the grand thing that they envisaged. They've been enamored of the idea ever since. War on poverty, war on this, war on the other. It's all about grand mobilizations of people. Think about that for a second. It's the opposite of individual liberty. If you are free, you are not obliged to be part of a grand narrative, a grand vision, or a big social plan. That kind of social engineering is the opposite of freedom. Number 4. Everyone is entitled to equal outcomes. The equality idea of the left is radically different to the equality idea of conservatives. Conservatives believe that everyone should be equal before the law, that everyone should have equal rights, but not that everyone should have equal outcomes. To ensure that, you have to, by definition, infringe on someone else's rights. The most basic representative microcosm of that idea is the school group project. 5 people are assigned to do something. One person perseveres, pulls all of the weight, does all of the work, but everyone is entitled to the same outcomes. That idea, writ large across a society, becomes a tyranny. I write extensively about that dynamic in my books, Is Your Thinking Keeping You Poor?, Poverty Proof, and the new one, Political Correctness Does More Harm Than Good. So who wins tomorrow? Well, who knows? And either way, life goes on as usual. That is, life goes on as usual unless the world's leading sponsor of individual freedom fundamentally transforms its understanding of itself and becomes a collectivist nation. Should it go that route, that would be a different story, and perhaps a rough way to learn an unnecessary lesson. Either way, here we go. As the world's most influential nation heads into its pivotal moment, God bless America.